He can love you deeply and still leave. Not because he stopped caring, not because someone else came along, but because something in him slowly shut down, and you didn't even see it happening. No matter how strong the connection once was, if you do these 6 things, even the most devoted man will begin to pull away. Hi, I'm Vernon again. I've seen love fade, not from betrayal, but from small, unnoticed cracks. It doesn't always end in shouting or heartbreak. Sometimes it just slips away because needs go unmet or we fall into habits that quietly hurt the bond. In this video, we'll go through 6 behaviors many women fall into, often without realizing, that quietly push a man away. These aren't dramatic mistakes. They're subtle, repeating, easy to miss, but they matter more than you think. And once you understand them, you can choose differently, not to change who you are, but to protect the connection you've worked so hard to build. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more wisdom and life reflections on love, relationships, and personal growth after 60. Wisdom is meant to guide, not just comfort. And now, let's look at the first behavior, the very one that made me walk away from the deepest relationship of my 30s.
Number 1. When loving too much makes you invisible. The trap of over-nurturing. She loved with her whole heart, always checking in, making sure I ate, supporting every dream I had, even the foolish ones. She gave without asking, poured herself into the relationship like it was her only purpose. And for a while, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. But over time, something changed. She stopped shining on her own. Her world revolved entirely around mine. Her hobbies faded, her laughter dimmed. And one day, I realized I missed her. The woman I fell in love with, vibrant, full of life, confident. What remained was someone trying so hard to hold on to me, she slowly let go of herself. You see, men fall in love with a woman's energy, her spark, her independence, her self-worth. Not because she gives everything to him, but because she brings a whole world of her own to the table. When that disappears, even if we stay, the attraction starts to fade. Not out of cruelty, but because emotional connection isn't built on need. It's built on presence. And presence starts with wholeness. A study from the University of Michigan found something quietly profound. Relationships thrive not when we merge into one identity, but when each partner maintains a strong sense of self. Mutual autonomy, the ability to stand fully in who you are while still choosing to love another, is the backbone of emotional attraction. Because no matter how close 2 people are, if one begins to disappear into the other, desire turns into duty, and duty, over time, dulls intimacy. So, if you've been giving, without pausing to ask what you need, it might be time to come back home to yourself. The ancient Stoics believed that the highest form of love is not found in dependency, but in 2 whole individuals choosing to walk alongside each other in freedom. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts, and when your thoughts are constantly centered on someone else's needs, while neglecting your own, you slowly dissolve." Returning to yourself isn't selfish. It's the beginning of restoring balance. You were someone before the relationship, a woman with dreams, joy, presence. That woman still matters. In fact, she is the one he was drawn to in the first place. So nurture her. Because self-abandonment, no matter how loving its intention, is never the path to lasting connection. That's the first behavior. Loving so hard that you forget who you are. Now, let's take a closer look at the second behavior, one that often hides in plain sight, but carries a quiet weight that most don't notice until it's already pushed him away.
Number 2. Unspoken resentment, when silence becomes distance. It starts small. You hold back a feeling. You tell yourself, it's not worth the argument. You swallow a need, thinking he should know. And before long, those little silences grow into walls. Resentment doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers in the things left unsaid, the smiles that feel a little forced, the intimacy that quietly vanishes. Unspoken resentment is like slow-moving rust, quiet, gradual, and corrosive. It doesn't break the bond in one loud moment, but weakens it slowly until the foundation no longer holds. Many women stay quiet because they want to protect the relationship, to keep things calm, to avoid conflict. But there's a quiet cost to that silence. Peace is not the absence of noise, it's the presence of understanding. When silence becomes a habit, it stops being about harmony and starts becoming a form of self-abandonment. There's a fine line between being patient and disappearing. And when you erase your voice long enough, you begin to question whether it ever mattered. True peace doesn't require your silence. It requires your truth, spoken with care. Men may not always say it, but we feel it when the warmth changes, when words are polite, but the energy is heavy. And here's what makes it harder. We often don't know what shifted. All we feel is distance, and we start to assume we're no longer wanted, no longer respected, no longer safe to connect. So speak your truth. Gently, yes. Kindly, of course, but clearly. Because silence, over time, is not neutral. It's destructive. And if this resonates with you so far, I'd appreciate it if you gave the video a quick like. It helps more people find this message, and it tells me you'd like to hear more reflections like this. What comes next might feel uncomfortably familiar, not because it's dramatic, but because it often hides behind good intentions. And yet, its impact runs deeper than most people ever realize. Number 3. Fixing instead of listening. When support becomes subtle control. At first glance, it looks like love, offering advice, stepping in to help, gently correcting what's wrong. But beneath that helpfulness can lie something else entirely. The quiet urge to fix someone, to shape him
into who you believe he could be. But here's the paradox. The more a man feels he's being helped in ways he never asked for, the less he feels accepted as he is. And acceptance, that's the ground where love grows. It's like constantly pruning a tree that was never meant to be tamed. You think you're helping it thrive, but slowly you cut away the parts that make it wild, rooted, real. Men don't need perfection. We don't need you to solve us. What we long for, even if we never say it, is to be witnessed, not managed. To be listened to, not improved. And when a man feels he's being quietly reshaped, even out of care, he begins to retreat inward. Not because he's proud, but because something sacred is slipping. The sense of being fully seen. There's a grief that comes with feeling like a project instead of a person. A slow ache that whispers, "Who I am isn't quite enough." In those moments, love starts to feel like a mirror of inadequacy, rather than a place of safety. And when that happens often enough, he no longer feels drawn toward the relationship. He feels watched, corrected, managed. At its core, love is not an improvement plan. It's the radical act of saying, "I see you, and I'm still here." So if your love comes with constant correction, even subtle, take a step back. Ask yourself, am I trying to love him or fix him? Because love doesn't ask for change. It creates space for transformation when and if the other person chooses it. That's the power of presence. That's the gift of trust. And now, let's explore the fourth behavior, one that often wears the mask of strength, but may be silently pushing him away. Number 4, emotional guarding, when independence turns into isolation. There's a kind of strength that many women wear like armor. The strength of not needing anyone, of handling everything alone, of never showing the depth of their emotional world. It's a strength built from past wounds, and it often protects them. But it can also quietly push a man out. He doesn't know what you're feeling, not because he doesn't care, but because you don't let him see it. You tell yourself, "I don't want to be a burden," or "he wouldn't understand anyway." But here's what often goes unseen. Emotional intimacy isn't built through perfection. It's built through vulnerability. A man can't connect with what you don't reveal. If all he sees is the capable, composed version of you, he may admire you, but he won't feel bonded to you. Because bonding doesn't come from admiration alone. It comes from shared truth. A woman once told me, "I've cried more alone in my car than I ever did in front of the man I loved." And that stayed with me, because it spoke to a deeper loneliness, one that isn't about being alone, but about being unseen. You don't have to fall apart to be loved, but you do have to let someone in. Emotional self-protection can feel like strength, but in a relationship, it can become a wall, one that says, "I don't trust you with my inner world." If that wall stays up too long, he may stop trying to climb it, not out of lack of love, but out of exhaustion.
The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre once said, "To be loved is to be seen." And perhaps that's the quiet tragedy of guardedness. It hides the very thing you most long to be loved for. So ask yourself gently, are you letting him love the real you, or just the version that never breaks? Because in love, strength isn't just holding it together. Sometimes it's allowing someone else to hold a piece of your heart. Independence is often praised, and rightfully so. But when it becomes a wall, it can lead to isolation. That's one side of the coin. The other, it's a different kind of inheritance, one rooted in the past, shaped by stories we may not even know we're still carrying. Let's turn to the fifth behavior, a quiet echo from old wounds that continues to shape the way we show up in love, often without our awareness.
Number 5. Unresolved baggage. When the past writes the present. We all carry stories. Some we remember vividly. Others live in our bodies, our reactions, our fears, quietly shaping how we love, how we trust, and how we pull away. Sometimes, the man in front of you pays the price for someone who hurt you decades ago. He says something innocent, but it touches a scar. He pulls back for space, and you relive the silence of a man who left without warning. This isn't about blame. It's about recognition. And if this part is stirring something in you, a memory, a realization, or even just a quiet yes, consider saving this video. You might want to return to it later when the reflection has settled deeper. When unprocessed pain from the past becomes the lens through which we see every new moment, and the tragedy is, we don't even know we're doing it. The philosopher Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Unhealed wounds have a way of rewriting the present with the language of the past. They make us suspicious when there's no threat, guarded when there's no danger, cold when we mean to be kind. You may be waiting for the other shoe to drop, even when there's no shoe. You may be testing him emotionally just to prove he won't pass. But real connection can't grow when it's tangled in old ghosts. A man can love you today, but if every moment feels like he's standing trial for another man's mistakes, he'll eventually retreat. Healing isn't about forgetting the past. It's about learning to separate memory from reality. So take time to ask yourself, are you reacting to him or to someone who hurt you long before he arrived? Because the heart deserves a chance to love without carrying the entire weight of your history. We've come a long way, and what remains may be the hardest truth to face. But in that truth lies a quiet kind of freedom. Number 6. Emotional dependency, when needing becomes draining. Have you ever felt like you were giving everything and yet still being left behind? That aching question, why wasn't I enough, lingers in the heart long after the goodbye. But sometimes it's not about being enough. It's about being too entangled, too emotionally dependent without realizing it. Emotional dependency is like planting your roots in someone else's soil. For a while, it feels nourishing, comforting, even intoxicating. But over time, the imbalance begins to show. One person becomes the sun, the air, the water, and the other forgets how to breathe on her own. What begins as closeness can slowly turn into pressure. the quiet expectation that he must fill every emotional gap, soothe every fear, validate every doubt. And no matter how much he gives, it's never quite enough. Not because you're too much, but because what's missing can't be filled by someone else. Men begin to pull away, not because they don't care, but because they feel consumed, like a flame slowly suffocated by too much air, too much needing, too much leaning, too little space. Healthy love grows where two people can stand beside each other, not inside each other, where connection is chosen, not clung to. So if your peace depends entirely on his presence, it may be time to turn inward, not to punish yourself, but to gently reclaim what was always yours, your own emotional grounding. Because the deepest love isn't about dependency, it's about interdependence, two full lives woven together by choice, not need. And that is what keeps a man close, not out of obligation, but because he's drawn to your wholeness.
So, where does all of this leave us? The truth is, love isn't lost in a single moment. It drifts, it fades in the quiet, in the overlooked, in the unspoken, and often in the name of love itself. If you've recognized even a piece of yourself in these 6 behaviors, don't see it as failure. See it as awareness, the kind of awareness that opens the door to growth, healing, and a deeper, more rooted kind of connection. Because the most powerful shift you can make isn't about changing for someone else. It's about coming home to yourself. The woman who knows her worth. The woman who speaks her truth. The woman who listens but doesn't lose herself. The woman who loves but never forgets to stand tall in her own light. As the poet Rainer Maria Rilke wrote, the point of marriage is not to create a quick commonality by tearing down all boundaries. On the contrary, a good marriage is one in which each partner appoints the other to be the guardian of their solitude. Love that lasts is not built on merging into one. It's built on choosing, again and again, to meet each other as whole people, seen, heard, and respected. So if you're still asking, why did he pull away, the answer may not lie in what you lacked. It may lie in what you gave up of yourself. Reclaim it. And when you do, love won't have to be chased. It will come not because you need it, but because you've made space for it to stay. And I'm Vernon. Thanks for watching my video. See you next time.